Hey there, thanks for joining me. Jorge Mario Bergoglio, better known as Pope Francis, the leader of the world's 1.4 billion Catholics, has passed away following a battle with illness. What will his legacy be? He was a controversial figure, a polarizing figure, even within his own church. Much of that wasn't seen by the world at large, but comments such as his "Who am I to judge?" comment certainly made the news and came as a surprise to people familiar with the Catholic Church's record on morals and the Catholic Church's record on judging. Some within his church believed he was too liberal, too progressive. The first Argentinian to be pope, the first from the Americas and the first from the Southern Hemisphere, he reimposed restrictions on celebrating the Latin Mass and opened the door to letting divorced and civilly remarried Catholics receive communion, which some thought was heresy. One archbishop made very serious accusations against Francis, stating Francis covered up allegations of moral impropriety on the part of a certain cardinal. That archbishop, the one who protested, was eventually defrocked. Were his allegations correct? I don't know, and that's not the point I'm making. The point is, Francis had his detractors. But you lead 1.4 billion believers in a church rooted in history and grappling with the present, and you're going to have your detractors. Others loved him. He was a genial man, a kind soul, it seems, shunning many of the trappings of the papacy. He had a regularness to him that many people could relate to. He'd once been a bouncer in a nightclub and worked as a janitor, so he had a certain everyman quality. He was seen by many people as more pastoral than theological. He broke with tradition by choosing not to be buried in St. Peter's, becoming, or he will become, the first pope to be buried in the Basilica of St. Mary Maggiore in hundreds of years. More than half of the almost 270 popes have been buried in St. Peter's, so this is a real break in tradition. He was a very political man, speaking out about issues such as climate change and immigration and a lot more. And he was the first Jesuit pope. The Jesuits were founded in part to combat the Reformation. They led the Counter-Reformation. In other words, Francis was part of a group committed to countering Bible-based Christianity, to opposing sola scriptura. So while Pope Francis's tone was a little different to that of, say, his predecessor, Pope Benedict XVI, he didn't alter the fundamental principles of the teachings of Rome in any way. So how do you evaluate a church leader, especially one so prominent, so influential? Do you criticize him for being political? Well, you can't really, because the Roman Catholic Church is a political institution. The Pope isn't just the head of a church, but also a head of state. The Vatican is a church and a nation. It's unique like that. Do you evaluate a church leader based on what he, or she for that matter, said about the environment, or the role of women in the church, or how the church relates to LGBTQ issues? You may, but keep in mind that's style more than substance. And if you base your approval of a church leader on what they say about the environment, you might be looking at things a little narrowly. As a man of faith, surely the legacy of Pope Francis must be based on matters of faith. And matters of faith for Christians rest on the Bible. Down through history, the Catholic Church has had a tenuous relationship with the Bible. Martin Luther, not a perfect man, but definitely way ahead of his time in terms of biblical understanding, was persecuted for teaching from the Bible and for contradicting the church. Many of Luther's 95 Theses dealt with indulgences, which are ways believers may earn a reduction in their time in purgatory. Bible translator William Tyndale was put to death for daring to translate the Bible into the language of the people, English in his case. Bible translator John Wycliffe was exhumed, his body dug up from the grave 44 years after he died, and his remains were cremated by the church, his ashes cast into the river Swift. He'd been declared by the church a heretic. John Huss burned at the stake. His partner in ministry, Jerome, same fate. Thousands and thousands, millions even, met with a similar fate. Now, you could accuse me of digging up old bones. You might insist that all of that is in the past. But it's today's Vatican that displays a life-sized statue of Ignatius Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits, Francis's order, with his foot pressed down on the neck of a Protestant believer, most likely Martin Luther. Now, some claim Ignatius has his foot on the throat of a devil. Well, you look for yourself and decide. If you visit St. Peter's, you can see for yourself as the statue is still there today in all its glory. That's a strong message. In other churches in Rome, there is zero doubt. A statue called the Triumph of Faith over Heresy is found in the Church of the Jesu, the Jesuit Mother Church, a church important to the late Pope Francis. This statue depicts Mary casting Martin Luther and John Huss out of heaven, while an angel rips their writings to shreds. Some believe that angel is also ripping the Bible to shreds. You can see the statue today. What you have to hope is that there really has been a change of attitude over the years. What can't be denied is that the Catholic Church has steadfastly opposed Bible teachings over the centuries. Now, that's not to say there aren't Catholics who love God. There are many, many, many. There are many who love God and love the Bible. But when it comes to matters of faith and doctrine, the final authority for the Roman Catholic Church is the magisterium, the office of the church responsible for interpreting the Bible. Now, you decide if that's good or bad. As a Protestant, I can't agree. Now, I'll try to disagree respectfully, but I'll disagree as that's my right. The final authority must be the Bible. The Roman Catholic Church, including the late Pope Francis, teaches confession to a priest, prayer to saints, purgatory, indulgences, infant baptism, that grace is obtained by receiving the sacraments, and so on and so on. None of that is biblical. Another example, Sunday sacredness was introduced into Christianity by the Roman Catholic Church, while the Bible clearly teaches the seventh day is the Bible Sabbath. Now, people are free to believe what they want to believe, although it should be said that was not true several hundred years ago. The next pope, whoever it is, will believe the same things Francis believed. And we ought to be free to agree to disagree, whether it's politics or sport or the economy or religion or whatever it is. Let people believe what they want to believe. But I would suggest tradition is not truth. I encourage you to take your faith from the Word of God. Prayerfully study the Bible and follow what it teaches. Where that coincides with the teachings of the Catholic Church or any other church, fine. But where it doesn't, follow the teachings of the Bible. So what will be Pope Francis' legacy? Who am I to judge?